Hello, this is Arielle from Inconspicuous Bear, and I'll be narrating the heroic version of the Twin Ogron encounter in Highmaul from a Guardian point of view. This encounter features Twin Ogron, hence the name of the encounter, each of which has a different set of abilities. As a Guardian, you will probably end up tanking Pole most of the time. However, if you have a less mobile tank, like say a Paladin, you may end up taking Fimos. The reason for that is because Fimos has an ability which requires you to move him away, whereas Pole you can keep stationary pretty much 100% of the time. In terms of where to tank, that's pretty much up to your raid. Everyone has done different strategies and different positionings on where to tank the boss, so come up with what's best for you. You will want to keep them together for vast majority of the encounter, except when Fimos does an ability called Whirlwind, which I'll cover later, at which point the tank on Fimos will be probably to set it up. Actually, is not right then, but likely maybe 5 to 10 seconds before, will drag Fimos off to a place in the room that is not occupied by anybody so that Whirlwind doesn't kill anyone. Now, the reason I mentioned you probably end up being on Pole most of the time is because Guardians probably have some inferior mobility to monks and warriors, and better than DKs and paladins. So, depending on who you end up picking with, you could be doing one or the other. This is because Displacer Beast is super useful for traveling large distances in a very short period of time, whereas, like, obviously, monks have roll, warriors have heroic leap, that sort of stuff. Anyway, overall, the encounters are very easy to tank. Ranges from extremely easy if you're the pole tank, or somewhat kinda difficult if you're the Fimos tank, just because movement can be kind of annoying, especially when Blaze is up. Again, something I'll talk about later. And by later, I basically mean right now. So the first thing you have to worry about as a tank affects your positioning and movement. It's called Blaze. Basically, Fimos throws two weapons around the room. They start pulsing firewalls out from them. Now, because they are thrown at random locations throughout the room, it doesn't really make a difference where you stand. Generally, I've talked about that before, positioning kind of up to you. However, what you will need to watch out for is to make sure that you're not going to get basically burned to death by walls of fire. Placing your camera top down is probably the easiest way to avoid them, so that way you can make sure that you are skirting around the edges of the fire instead of running or getting basically them walking right over you. If you do have to go through a flame wall, it is much, much easier to run straight through it, and you will only take one stack, whereas if you let it kind of pass over you, you will take a lot more stacks. Since it does about 8k fire damage per second per stack, you want to avoid getting stacks if at all possible. So try to avoid the fire. If you can't, just run straight through it, you'll be fine. Each Ogron has a special ability that does extra amounts of damage to the tank. Fimos' ability is called Double Slash, swings for both weapons at the same time, and Pole's ability is called Shield Bash. Kind of not really worth worrying about at all. They just kind of happen. Just make sure you're not casting a spell when Shield Bash goes off. I don't know why you would be, that's kind of stupid. Otherwise, they just kind of happen. You don't have to pay attention to timers or anything. You can even just turn those timers off. They're not going to change anything about what you do. I've only really included Pulverize just for peace of mind. It doesn't do anything. Like, as a tank, it doesn't do anything. There'd be basically 3 hits. The first hit does some physical damage to you and everyone within 3 yards of you, so make sure you're not standing on top of your co-tank. Easy. Second one just kind of drops some rock from the ceiling. Don't stand in it. I mean, you can, it's not going to do anything. Meh, whatever. Third one drops a huge piece of rock from the ceiling, which does basically no damage, because you're a tank and you don't care, so you don't even have to move. The melee will have to run out and run back in, and to be honest, it's much, much easier if you just keep the boss stationary so the melee know where they have to go. So, just stand there. I usually use Barkskin for each Pulverize, just to make everyone's lives easier, but otherwise it's kind of a piece of cake. Now, if you're the Fimos tank, the big thing you have to pay attention to, like I mentioned at the start of this video, is something called Whirlwind. Basically, Fimos will spin around in a circle and murder anyone that's inside the circle. You will have to stay inside the circle, or else he'll start moving while spinning, which is bad. So, use a cooldown. Barkskin probably good. Make sure you Pulverize up, and you just kind of sit there and take it. It's not really that bad. So, you're not going to die or anything. The big thing, if you're the Fimos tank, that you have to know is that you need to move him before Whirlwind starts. And since their hitboxes are so gigantic, moving them is a huge pain in the bum. So, make sure that you start moving probably about 10 seconds prior to when Whirlwind's supposed to go off. That way, he'll already be in position. You won't have to worry about like a melee following him or running on top of a ranged or whatever. It gives everyone plenty of time to react to the fact that you're moving him. Now that Whirlwind's over with, there's one additional ability that I didn't really cover because 90% of the time it doesn't matter, and it's called separation anxiety. Basically, when the bosses get moved apart, they do more damage. Now, a huge portion of the time, this doesn't matter because they're tanked on top of each other, so who really cares? But when you're moving Fumos out for a Whirlwind, it can cause both Fumos and Pole to do a little bit of extra damage. I don't really pay attention to it ever, not even on Mythic. So, yeah, take that for what you will. Talents are pretty much the same as always. I'd recommend sticking with the core 4 talents: Snare and Ward, Soul of the Forest, Pulverize, and DOC. If you are the Fumos tank, taking Displacer Beast would not be a horrible idea, because it makes it really easy to move him for a Whirlwind. You just Displacer Beast away, wait for him to get to you, and you're done, pretty much. So that's a really good thing to have. Obviously, Cliff Stampeding Roar, Glyph Maul should be like the most obvious thing in the world, because you have 2 dudes staying on top of each other for most of the entire fight. Extra damage. In terms of Guardian things you can do, obviously start the pull off with Berserk. Everyone typically heroes off the pull, usually. So you'll want to have Berserk, Armor Potion, and Hero going up at the same time, which means a huge amount of extra damage. Keep Thrash on both mobs all the time for extra rage. And if you want to get really fancy, you can tab Dot with Lacerate. It's not a big deal, but extra damage never hurt nobody. Hope you've enjoyed this video, and good luck with Twin Ogron. Spread for the Pulverize, and then moving quickly for a Roar. Okay, rocks now. Shield Charge and Quake.
I'm gonna strike this quick.
You can during it if you don't get stained and stuff for yourself.
This fire's gonna be nasty, be careful. Interrupt.
Watch out for Whirlwind.
The fuck? Pulverize, spread. Dodge rocks.
I'm gonna him through the.
And feel, get in. Shield charge next. Quake next.
Watch the fire.
Interrupt. This fire is also not going to be very
Get
nice.
revival up.
Watch out for Whirlwind.
Pulverize 2. Shield charge next.
Good call on that healing tide, by the way.
Followed by Enfeeble.
Cross in the middle.
Get okay.
Lots of love on the tanks. Merrick and I are both down.
And finish them off. Nice job, guys.